So the first one that I've been hobbying on quite a bit lately, I've really enjoyed is TruffleRuby.
Yeah,
Um, so I don't know if you've played around with it. I don't know if you're familiar with Chris Seaton, who I mentioned earlier. It's okay if you've not heard of Chris.
I've heard of Chris. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, it's kind of a sad introduction here. He's a teammate of mine, recently passed away,
Mm-hmm.
and he created TruffleRuby, and that was kind of the impetus for me. And I was like, you know what can I do as somebody who's not as brilliant as Dr. Seaton was in the world? I'm like, well, why don't I just use TruffleRuby? I'm like a hype man on Twitter about stuff I think is cool. TruffleRuby is meant to be for the masses. And yes, it focuses on performance as an implementation and being the fastest thing it can and the most performant thing. But why don't I just have fun and show people it's not terrifying? So, luckily someone I work with does work on TruffleRuby and demystified it. So I'm cherubying and, like getting it on my machine, running everything I have with it. And I'm like, oh, it's talking to Brittany Martin. It's like, you'll have to show me how. I'm like, it's like another install. It's like, it's totally fine. But what I'm really enjoying hobbying on is learning and trying to discover where it really excels, because I don't know much about the back end. So I'm building I changed everything. This is the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of doing Heroku, I'm now doing Hatchbox. Instead of
Yeah.
doing Rails, I'm now doing Rhoda. Instead of doing Ruby, I'm doing TruffleRuby. Instead of doing an ORM, I'm doing SQL from Jeremy Evans. So it's so fun to take every level of what I normally work with and completely change it from framework to language implementation.
Yeah.
And I'm just writing a bunch of endpoints and benchmarking them and trying to see if I can find the sweet spot for like a JSON read-only API. And if there's a certain shape that is really, really good in TruffleRuby compared to Ruby 3.2. So that's something I enjoy kind of changing things out and geeking out on. So
Yeah.
and I'll hesitate on jumping to the other one, but I don't know if you've played with any of those tools before.
I haven't played with, I haven't played with TruffleRuby for sure. But, something just came to mind as you were kind of going through this and talking about this, and something I've been kind of thinking in the back of my head. When we're talking about hobby programming, I wonder if it would be helpful for more people to start live streaming their hobby programming sessions so that other people can see, oh, this is a cool thing. Maybe I'll go hobby program on that for a while. Or this is how, hobby programming together. You get a chat full of people, having fun together. I wonder if that's a thing I ought to start thinking about helping people with.
Yeah, like what, like bring someone in while they're hobbying and look at what they're looking at. It's like what's good but not making you money. What's really driving you nuts.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you were to bring me in, then I'd probably talk about, and this is what I hacked on this week. I know for time, but I'll at least share.
Sure.
I'm not really announcing it to the world, but I've done it and it's not a secret. So are you familiar with Shoes from Why the Lucky
Yes.
Stiff?
Yeah.
So for the audience, and you said about doing desktop programming, which I didn't have an experience with. So Shoes was Wise DSL back in 2007. It came out to write desktop applications in Ruby back then and be able to send it to like your grandma on a Windows machine and it would run. So it's like a way to use the beauty of Ruby combined with the beauty of Wise taste with DSLs, which is very good. If you use Nokogiri, that is Wise DSL from Apricot ported over to Nokogiri, right? Like, so
God, he was a smart guy.
before, and I'm really seeing it this week because before I was writing Rails apps, I was writing Shoes apps back in 2014. Unfortunately, like having something that can package to Windows and Linux and Mac and maintaining it and all the features that it does for writing a full desktop app, Shoes 4 was attempted. It hasn't received a commit in about 6 years. Shoes 3 had half a commit about 5 years ago. It's not really something you can do anymore. It doesn't run. So I nerd sniped a lot of people, and we currently have an implementation that we are working on called Scarpe, which is Italian for shoes. I nerd sniped. It's on WebView. So like think of the tooling has changed for like how you make a desktop app. Like think about like HTML, Electron. But what we're using now, I nerd sniped someone into making the shell, like the gem that would support it. But Marco Rudeloso, who's from the UK as well. And we finally got 10 people together, really nerd sniped them. And we've gone through about 57 PRs. We got about 20 desktop apps working. Even though it's called Scarpe, we have it accept shoes, complete DSL. We have hundreds of examples that we brought in that we're testing against. So if you go to, we have a Discord literally now, Scarpe
Cool.
DM, sees the shoes. So SCARPE-DIEM. And you can join and see what we're getting up to. Schwad/Scarpe. We have a logo that we've done through Open Dolly already. Like, we're going mad. We have tests. We're like really doing this. We want it's early implementation stages, but what we want is like you to start seeing at conferences by the end of the year talking about like not worrying about the back end tech, people to be able to easily write desktop applications. So you're talking about Dragon Ruby. This is like bailing on web as well. So what can you write for yourself is on the desktop? And then the packaging will be later in the year, hopefully. We haven't looked at that yet. You do still run Ruby myapp.rb, but the packaging, so you can send it to your dad with a Windows only machine or your cousin on a Mac, and none of them have Ruby, but they can run your app. That's what we want. And it's a beautiful way. We don't have to change a thing. Like, the rule is don't change Wise DSL. Now, he doesn't have like a pickaxe book level spec, so we have like 100 sources of knowledge we're combining. But his manual is called Nobody Knows Shoes, and it's as beautiful as the poignant guide. It was really artistic. And anyway, you can see me getting hyped about it. This is what I've been doing for the last 4 days. So keep your eyes out for it.
We'll have to have some sidebars on this, because I'm now interested, because Dragon Ruby, it runs on mRuby, so it's embedded Ruby, so it's compiled to everywhere, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things it needs when you're developing games is GUIs. So I'm wondering how that might work. Now, it's against mRuby, which is a little bit different than the cRuby, but I'd be interested to have a little sidebar with you on that at some point.
Yeah, and I'll just say for is it Christian who just asked there?
Yep.
If you go to search on Discord and go Scarpe, so SCARPE, it's Italian for shoes. Scarpe DM is our Discord, but the URL is my last name. I'm sorry, Schwad, like my GitHub handle /Scarpe right now. I'll talk with the original owner if we want to go to GitHub Scarpe and make it a proper organization or not. It's not literally, we've just been working on it for 3 days. It's early implementation. Yeah, so I'm a fork of that. So Schwad. Thank you, Christian. But yeah, sorry for getting too excited. I think the thing is, it's like trying to explain the web to someone in 1997 and saying you might be able to send someone a picture or a song. It's like, I don't know what doesn't exist. Like, for example, I put something in where I could write Ruby in the app real time and have it come to a real-time AST on the other side for me to look at. You know, like, because what can you do on the command line? Well, why don't you can just put that in your GUI. What are the 10 commands that you run all the time on your command line? You always forget and have to look up, what can they be buttons? And then you can return their value to your app. Or the big hack is like, you know, when you go online and no one who knows anything about command line hacking, it's like, I need to rename all my files on my machine to remove like the first 4 letters of 300 files, but I don't know how to program. You can make 20 of these things where you're like, well, it's like a one-liner in Bash, right, or system call, right? And then you can just make that an app and you can package it up and share it with people. It's like Discord, you say about APIs, Discord has an API. Like I was saying today, I could literally go on Discord on my app and just have it point to the general channel and just type and send messages back and forth and receive them. You don't have all the crap about, since it's a constant loop, like you're not doing the like adding and removing is live in real time. So if you're saying on change in this text box, change this thing on the right hand side on the grid, well, it just will as you're typing. Like you're not having to think of the web anymore. It's a different world, which, Chris, I imagine you have a lot of experience. The thing we kept talking about is we have to work with HTML flavor and we hide it, but we're trying to think in desktop flavor, which is its own way of looking at the world. It's like, it's not components, it's widgets, right?
Right. Yep.
So yeah, anyway, if anyone's interested, there you go.
If you like this clip and want to watch another one, you can click right here, or if you want to watch the full video, you can click here.